not that easy, although a surprising amount of people know the answer. Right, now there isn't a family in the UAE that isn't having to juggle their money right now. Nearly everyone I know, literally, I mean, you and I were just talking in the break, nearly everyone I know has taken some sort of pay cut, and the cost of living hasn't really come down. So how can we make, although apart from rent, they have come down, but how can we make the best of the cash that we do have coming in? Let's chat to someone who has made making money management his entire career. Rami Cassis, the founder and CEO of Parabellum Investments. He specializes in helping low to mid-market companies grow their profits. He's got a proven success of growing companies ranging in size from $5 million all the way up to $150 million in revenue. Offices in London, Frankfurt, Dubai, of course, Singapore and Sydney. And he previously worked for big corporations holding positions including chairman, CEO, COO, lots of O's and C's, and operations director. Rami holds degrees in engineering, aerospace, and pure and applied mathematics, both gained at the University of New South Wales in Australia. Hi, Rami, how are you doing?
Hi, Georgia. How are you? That was a very kind introduction. I barely recognized myself.
Well, you're a geek. Like, I mean, I got to come down on that. Like, pure and applied mathematics. That's
yes, well, you know,
super
the
geek.
world belongs to you today.
It does. Yeah, literally, the geeks will inherit the earth, and that is how it, it definitely has been proven that way. Really lovely to have you on the line. You must be a very busy man,
thank you for having me.
Thank you. A real pleasure.
Not at all. Thank you for making the time.
Yes. Okay. So apart from maths, studying aerospace engineering, which just sounds utterly awesome, how come you're not designing spaceships right now? Did you ever go into that as an industry, as a job, or did you stay in maths?
Well, I mean, I was born in Cairo to Egyptian Lebanese parents who decided for me what my career options were going to be very early on. And they gave me the options of medicine or engineering, and I couldn't really stand the thought of cutting someone up. So I thought I may as well try going into engineering. So I studied engineering, I have to say, in large part to appease the requirements of my parents. But having studied engineering and worked in the area for a few years, I quickly focused on how on earth I was going to get out of there. So I started in oil and gas, in fact. I worked as an engineer in oil and gas for many years, actually, across 9-10 years, for a company called Schlumberger. And it was a fantastic experience and was really the background and the experience it gave me to then move on and do my other career choices of acquiring and developing mid-market firms.
Now, I always feel horribly intrusive asking these questions because I've always been brought up that you don't really talk to people about their money or their earnings or their earning potentials, but that is the nature of the Money Diaries, and the hope is that it will help us all manage our own money and sort of have a different perspective on how we manage our finances. So how much did you get paid for your first job? Was it a decent salary? Did your degree give you a decent job straight off?
Well, yes, because there was a lot of danger money associated with what I was doing. I worked. My first stint was in the middle of the Australian desert, in a camp with about 180 men and 2 women. I can't say it was that much fun.
I would not have signed up for that job.
No,
as a girl,
I didn't quite realize what I was signing up into at the time. So when you work in the oil and gas sector, you end up working all the hours God sends under very difficult conditions, but it was still a great grounding because your personality as an individual is formed through adversity. But without being evasive in terms of the question, Georgia, I think my first salary all those years ago, I'm 53 now, was probably about $80,000, which is, I guess, quite a lot of money for a graduate.
Yeah, not bad at all.
But I was working 14 weeks at a time and had 2 weeks off. So there was no work-life balance. There was just work.
I definitely feel I went into the wrong sector because my first salary was £13,000 a year. Tax.
No, I get it. But you probably got to see your friends on the weekends, though.
I did.
I don't think I had any left by the end of the first couple of years that I was there.
And so what was it like when you were growing up? Was your family well off, or did you have enough money to get by? Or was your career a path out?
No, my parents, we never really grew up with very much money, and my parents always taught me the importance of, I guess, hard work. And the only legacy they said they could give me was instill some sense of hard work and to try and get a decent education. So they're the things that we focused on. And we moved around a lot. I mean, we were not diplomats. But I think I went to about 9 schools when I was growing up.
Gosh.
Across Egypt, France, and Australia. So those circumstances kind of teach you to adapt. I was 14 years old when we moved to Sydney. I couldn't speak a word of English. So when you live through the circumstances where you're the outsider, it forces you to become more resilient, more disciplined, and really try to focus on what it is you want to do. But no, we grew up with no money, and all we had was what we could get by with, and what we get out of hard work, frankly.
And so you did your extraordinary job in engineering in the oil and gas field for 9 years, and then you must have. Yep. Then you made the move into finance, I presume. That must have been that was brave.
Well. After 9 years, kind of all over the globe, I moved to London and worked with KPMG for a couple of years, and then worked with a large IT services firm for 4 years. And I still hadn't worked out what it is that I wanted to do. I had worked out that I no longer wanted to be CEO of somebody else's company. But I thought, actually, I can't start a business by myself from nothing because it's just not the way I'm wired up. But what I think I can do is build or improve a business that may be languishing or might have stalled. So I'd set a bit of money aside. So I was employed until the age of 40. I'd set a bit of money aside at the time, and took the courage to buy a very small business in Doncaster, if you or your listeners happen to know where that is.
North of England.
So in South Yorkshire, exactly. And so my first business was a 15-person firm that was scanning documents in the north of England, and I applied the experience and the skills that I learned for all of those years as an employee to turn that business around and to grow it. You didn't need a lot of money at the time to buy that business. It was a lot of money, but it was, from memory, it was about $15,000. So it is money that people might be able to put aside. And there are a lot of these small businesses out there where if you feel you have the confidence and the skill to develop and grow them, I think it's the kind of opportunity that I've taken based on my own life experiences.
Really interesting. I'm going to ask you, because you'd obviously put some money aside, as you mentioned there, up to the age of 40. I'm going to ask you about your savings ideas, what you do spend money on, whether you're a watch or a car type of guy. All of those questions coming up in just a few minutes. So please do stay on the line. I'm in conversation with Rami Cassis, the CEO and founder of Parabellum Investments. It is our money diaries, and we'll be coming back to them in just a minute. Hello there. You're listening to Afternoons. I'm Georgia, standing in for Helen just for today, and I want to tell you all about our Back to Business powered by WebEx. We have teamed up with our friends at Cisco. Those are the guys who kept us all connected via WebEx, and to bring you the information you need to get back to business. We are offering 40 business people an exclusive opportunity to take part in our first seminar based around building consumer confidence. All you need to do is join Richard Dean and Patrick Chalhoub. That is the CEO of Chalhoub Group. He is the king of Dubai luxury, and he will be telling us what he has done to protect his company during COVID-19. He'll be joined by Shireen El Khatib, CEO of Majid Al Futtaim Shopping Malls, and Jens Ravenboll. Now, he's the CEO of Yisk and the founder and CEO of Mercurius International. Now, both of those guys have their both of those guys and gals have their fingers firmly placed on the pulse of the country's consumer industry. Our series of webinars, they're not going to be ordinary webinars. They are going to be top-class webinars. And if you want the opportunity to join those webinars, to watch them, and they're live from the NASDAQ Dubai, all you need to do is register now. Dubai1038.com. Places are very, very limited, and it is going to be an opportunity for you to really sort of mine the greatest business minds of the UAE. So just check it out online, Dubai1038.com. Back to Business, that is, powered by WebEx.
Work-life balance on Afternoons with Helen Farmer.
One man who I might have to add to the roster for the Back to Business webinars is actually Rami, who is joining us on the line now. We've got Rami Cassis, the CEO and founder of Parabellum Investments. Thank you for staying on the line, Rami. Lovely to have you with us.
Pleasure.
Rami specialises in helping lower to mid-market companies grow their profits. And when we left you, you had just bought your first company in Doncaster and you'd saved the money to be able to do that. What is your approach towards savings? Do you, as I've heard recommended in the past, save half of your income? Do you think that's what people ought to be doing?
I think that could be an unrealistically high number, depending on people's income and outgoings and whether you have a family to support and so on. So I think more important than saving a specific percentage of your income, although half would be a great result if one would be able to do it, is to work out what it is you want to do with your life. And I mean, I don't want to sound like my parents, and I hate dispensing advice, but by that I mean, I'd recommend people find the kind of thing that really turns them on, that really excites them, that they want to be spending their time doing. It's no good investing. It's not good. I think it's no good to save and invest and put money into an opportunity or into an asset that you're not particularly interested in. It's hard to get excited about the stock market, and obviously one has no control over what happens to the movement of shares. So I think my overwhelming advice would be, self-awareness is a really important criteria, and I'd probably encourage people to try and set up their own business. And more and more of us are doing this than ever before. And an interesting stat is that I think 2 out of every 3 new businesses these days are set up by women. But in the context of a digitally connected world dominated by geeks, just to make your earlier point, Georgia, I think now is a tremendous opportunity, and it's a tremendous time for people to set up their own businesses. The question is what, and that comes back to my first point. I think everybody has a talent and a skill at doing something in a certain sector, in a certain industry. And it's finding something that really gets people up in the morning so it doesn't feel like work. So it feels like, you're doing something you enjoy doing.
Tell me, what is the one thing that you would never buy because you think it's a waste of time and money? Obviously not a company that you think you can build.
My initial answer was probably going to be a pension plan.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's totally different to what you would normally expect from people. Do you?
It is, and the reason why I say that is because, and I said this to myself from the very beginning of my professional career. I have 30 or 40 years of work at least. I need to be able to have enough money saved aside for the time that I decide to retire, and the money that I put into a pension is money that I'm not able to put into an opportunity, into something else. So people are always advising you, yes, put money aside for a pension because it might be tax efficient, because it saves it's savings that you may well need for a rainy day. But the converse to that is it's also money that you're not able to use for other opportunities. And I would urge people to back themselves, to find what it is that they want to do and go for it.
Okay, so if I gave you $1 million dirhams to invest or to spend, what would you do with it today?
I'd do a deal. I'd buy another business.
Really? Just straight up?
Yeah.
Do you buy...
Yes. Well, that's my trade, but yes, I'd buy another business.
Do you buy stuff other than businesses, like the watches, cars, suits?
It's travel, because I'm based in Dubai, but I spend a lot of time in London and in France. I'm also very close to my 7-year-old daughter, Laetitia, who I see 1 week out of 2. But most of my spending is actually, putting all of the joking aside, is actually in sports, is in health. I think, it's a bit of a glib statement, but I want to live to be 100, and looking after my health and having grown up in sport, it's the activity that I spend most of my time and money on. But no, I don't buy stuff. I'm not really into cars or watches. I mean, like everybody else, I like property. But any money that's set aside is money that I set aside into what I enjoy doing, which is Parabellum Investments.
Do you believe that there are some people who just know how to grow money, that it's an innate ability and that not all people possess it?
No, I don't believe that at all. I think a lot depends on your upbringing and the attitudes to money that is instilled in you by your parents. It's taken me, so I was 40 or 41 by the time I worked out what I wanted to do. Some people work it out earlier, some people never work it out, and some people work it out later in life. But I don't believe there is an innate ability for one to be better than another at managing money. I think it's a reflection of how we're taught to behave and how we're taught to think as children. There may well be, you're probably a better dancer than I, Georgia. So that's the kind of thing where I think we may well grow up with different innate abilities. But something like managing money and thinking about doing something that one might enjoy isn't an advantage that's given to one person over another.
Where do you put your money? So if you have a sort of a pie chart of where you put investments, in savings accounts or in gold or in, paintings. Birkin handbags are supposed to have been the best investment for the last decade.
Indeed, yes.
Where would you place things? What percentage would you have in property versus a stock portfolio, for example?
I would argue, everybody has a different percentage. I would say right now you'd want half of your money in cash because there are tremendous opportunities that are likely to be coming up, sadly, over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. And probably the balance split between equities and property. But it's a very broad summary because I'm not a big fan of equities given one has absolutely no control about where they go. I prefer to put money in investments where I have some control because if I end up losing money, then I only have myself to blame. There's nothing worse than losing money and blaming it on someone else.
And final question, which sectors are you sharking at the moment? There's blood in the water. Where are you looking
at? That's a slightly unkind word, Georgia, but I'll take it. It's fine.
Astute.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Well, look, I think my trade has always been in enterprise, so in business-to-business activities. So, but right now, if one were to look at which sectors to look at, I would go completely counter-cyclical, so typically automotive and potentially retail, but online retail. Because if there was ever a time when the automotive sector was going to be at its lowest, it's now. And I have to say, retail has probably suffered. So e-commerce or online retail is I think now an interesting sector to get into in certainly over the course of the next 1 to 2 years.
Amazing. Rami, thank you so much for answering my incredibly intrusive questions. I really appreciated you joining
My pleasure, Georgia. Thank you for making the time. Thank you
for the Money Diary. That's Rami Cassis, the CEO and founder of Parabellum Investments. Just in case you were wondering what they do, he specialises in helping lower to mid-market companies grow their profits. Thank you once again, Rami. Pleasure to have you on the line.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Now,